Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm calling in today from Chicago, and I'm very excited to be here. This week is a very, very special week for the life of Would You Hide Me and everything that's happening with the Weber family. Tomorrow, May 20th, is the 75th anniversary of the Weber siblings emigrating to America from Nazi Germany. It is a momentous occasion. I'm so happy to be here in Chicago to mark the occasion with my mom and her beloved sisters, Gertrude and Renee, and we'll Zoom our Aunt Judith in. And we're all gathering together tomorrow at a theater that has been donated so that we can screen the rough cut of the film. And we'll get the opinions from these four incredible survivors. And maybe they'll make a couple tweaks, maybe they'll make some adjustments. Who knows? We'll see. But it'll be the most fascinating test screening I've ever been to. It's also an opportunity for me to thank my donors. So that's great. We've got some of our fabulous VIP donors attending tomorrow as well. So I'm thrilled this morning to bring on my guest, Rabbi Steve Lowenstein, who actually hosted me at his synagogue not too long ago to talk about Would You Hide Me, continue the conversation about Holocaust awareness. And I'm so thrilled. So let me see if he is joining us. Let's see if I can add Steve Lowenstein. Rabbi Lowenstein, where are you today? There we go. And I'm sending a request. And there he's joined. So I'm going to wave at all these wonderful people that are joining here. There you are. Look at that. You worked on the first try. I'm so impressed. That's wonderful.
Wow.
Hi, good morning.
Hello there.
Hello. Look at all this incredible artwork you have in your office. Wow. Colorful, bright, I'm sure very inspirational. Yes.
I got a little Theodore Herzl over there. I got Willie Mays. I got the New York Marathon, and over in the corner I got Sandy Koufax.
Oh my God.
As a good Californian, you would appreciate that.
Yes, definitely, most definitely. Well, I'm in your city. I'm here. I'm in your city.
I cannot believe your movie is premiering tomorrow and I can't be there. I am devastated.
No, it's not a premiere. It is not a premiere. Tomorrow is a test screening. Tomorrow is the celebration of the Weber siblings' 75th anniversary of emigrating to America. I want to be there. I want you there too. But that's what tomorrow is about. And it just so happens that I'm going to take the opportunity to let them test screen the work in progress. So it is not a finished movie. We still have so much more to do. We have to add animation. We have to add visual effects. We have to add sound scoring. There's a lot of work ahead of us. But there will be a premiere in the fall, and I'll make sure that you're.
Well, I am not going to miss that. But unfortunately, I got a 5 o'clock bar mitzvah. Fortunately for the family, but yes. Unfortunately, I have a 5 o'clock bar mitzvah. But I would love to be there.
Oh, that's so great. Well, I'll make sure that I'll clear the calendar with you first. How about that?
I'll work around you. Tomorrow's it's the 75th anniversary of the family arriving here.
Yes. It's the 75th anniversary of them actually putting foot on U.S. soil at Ellis Island in New York Harbor. They took a 10-day voyage from the port of Bremerhaven to America. And we've been chronicling their voyage on social media over the last 10 days. So for anybody who's listening in and has been following, I have a pretty amazing team of people that help me with all this social media, I have to admit. And Mai and Muskan and so many other people contribute to creating these stories. We have Silent Hero Sundays, and we have book reads Fridays, and we have quotes on Mondays, and I can't do all of it by myself. So they really help me curate the best of the best, and we're always willing to take more ideas from everybody else.
I just think it's so amazing that you're able to chronicle this story and that you're telling this story, kind of in real time.
Well, we're happy to do it. I love doing it. And also, this is the first time I've gotten to see my mom since Thanksgiving 2019. And, that's been the extra most.
Are you staying with your mom?
No, I'm actually staying with my sister. My sister Jen lives down on Lil. I think, in Sheffield, in that neighborhood. It's a new home for them, so I'm not even that familiar with this neighborhood in particular. But you are on Banter with Beth today so that we can talk about you and your journey. And I am so curious to know about your point of view and point of entry into the rabbinical. I'm curious to know about your educational perspective on Holocaust awareness. So many things. I have a whole bunch of questions, but I have a feeling I'm going to let you talk, and then I'll just intercede here and there. That's what's going to happen.
We learned in rabbinic school that a rabbi should be ready to speak at the drop of a hat.
Right.
And if no one drops their hat, you drop yours.
So go ahead, Rabbi. Drop.
Okay. So again, it's an honor to be here with you. And your story is inspirational. Mine's not so much. My grandparents, came to America, a long time ago, pushing a cart through Western Pennsylvania. And, my dad was born in Latrobe, Pennsylvania. My mom was born in Aliquippa, Pennsylvania, and they met in Pittsburgh. And I came into this world in Pittsburgh in Squirrel Hill. So the Tree of Life shooting really meant a whole lot to me. My parents were married in that synagogue.
Wow.
But what was amazing, and when I look back on my life, I realized that what was amazing is that growing up in Squirrel Hill, of all places, was one of the most fascinating places to be from. We had a 4-unit apartment building. And in 1969, when my parents, bought the building, one of our neighbors was African American. One of our tenants was African American. One of our tenants was a gay couple, and one of them, 2 men, and one of them, and on the top floor were 3 fraternity boys from Carnegie Mellon University. And literally, the door was open, from the upstairs to the downstairs, and people were in my living room. That's how I grew up. But, I never got to ask my parents, God, what was it like to rent an apartment in 1968 to an African-American couple? Joyce and Clay Shelby, she was working for WQED, which was producing the Fred Rogers TV show, and God, what a bold statement to do. Excellent. But that was Squirrel Hill. That was Pittsburgh at the time. So that was super cool. And then then we moved to Cleveland, and I grew up in a suburban, Cleveland life, and, always thought I'd go to law school or business school. And sadly, my dad died when I was, he got sick when I was in high school and died when I was in college. And I just decided that, I needed to take a different path. Mm-hmm. And I decided to go to Israel, and I fell in love with Israel. And I went to Israel in 1984. We had been there once as a family in 1979. And we went, as a family. And I said, boy, this is my place. And I fell in love with Israel. And I knew I wanted to kind of do something to come back to Israel and to visit Israel often. So I started to work in the Jewish world, and I graduated college and took a job in Michigan, met my wife, and decided a very wise teacher at Hillel director at Michigan by the name of Michael Brooks, who was at University of Michigan Hillel for years and years
I've
and
heard
years.
Of him. He's famous. Yeah.
He was the best. He was the one who said, get the title rabbi before your name, and you can do anything. You can be a camp director. You can be a federation director. You can be a social worker. Whatever you want to do. Never in a million years did I ever dream of coming to being a congregational rabbi. But I said, okay, I'll do it. And in 1990, I went to Israel. I got married, and then 3 weeks later left for Israel. And it was right in the middle of the Gulf War. Scud missiles were falling in Israel, and here I am, a newlywed. And but I've always had that connection to Israel, and fell in love with being a rabbi, and served small congregations when I first started as a student in northern Michigan and in Middletown, Ohio, and in Seminole, Oklahoma, the hotbed of oil. And fell in love with being a congregational rabbi, and realized that was what I wanted to do, was to be a congregational rabbi. And in 1995, was hired by Fred Schwartz at Temple Sholem of Chicago, where I'm one of the first people I ever met was your dad.
I love it.
Who was one of the tallest Jews I ever met. And as Fred Schwartz would often say, he would point to your dad and say, he's a good basketball player. You know, he actually, I know what he said. He used to say he can dribble with his left hand. Like, he was a good basketball player. So I met your dad and Jeannie and your family, and
yes, yes.
love,
so my nephew, you probably met my nephew Elliot, who now is, I think, maybe 6'4". So he can dribble with his left foot, not even his hand. And then we have my brother's son Trevor, I think, is around 6'4" also. So I'm a very tall woman, and I feel like minuscule around these guys.
Yeah, so fell in love with your dad. Your dad was involved at that time, was super involved at Hebrew Union College, yes, and with David Ellenson and with Fred Schwartz, and I had 7 fabulous years at Temple Sholem, where I learned about being a rabbi in a really big place, and then it's now going on 20 years that I came up here for the last 2 decades. So it's been wonderful.
I mean, you clearly have such a special, probably every rabbi does, but at least my experience of being with you, meeting you, certainly the first time we met through Alyssa Shapiro when she hosted that event for me, and then when you invited me to meet your congregation, you have such a beautiful connection with your congregants, and they just seem so eager to show up. Despite this pandemic, they are there on Zoom, participating, engaged, and then even seeing all the students on Sunday when you invited my mom to come and speak. And it takes a very special leader to be able to bring everybody through this pandemic and stay present and really stay connected to their Judaism or whatever spirituality it is that they feel like connecting to on that day, in that hour, in that minute, right? So I applaud you, and I would love to learn more about how you have developed you're talking about meeting Fred Schwartz and such, but you've really developed these leadership skills in such a way that it is so clearly serving your community.
Well, you are very, very, very kind. So thank you. This was last year was supposed to be my honorary doctorate of 25 years in the rabbinate. You get a degree after 25 years, a DD, a Doctor of Divinity, although most people call it the didn't die degree. DD, didn't die. Like, you made it 25 years. But in many ways, I thought the 25th year would be an easy year. This past year was the hardest year I've ever had in the rabbinate. There's no question about it. Trying to do this, trying to figure out how to communicate with people, figuring out how to make impacts with people. I worked 3 times harder for a third of the impact in this past year. But things are changing, and we've been able to still do B'nai Mitzvah and lots and lots of life cycle events. Far too many funerals, COVID and non-COVID. There's a lot of pain out there. But early on, I heard a rabbi say once that more than they care what you really know. And I just love that, like that, kind of just, you got to be there for people in the best and worst times. And I've had a true privilege to be able to do that. But just going back to your original question, I was ordained by Alfred Gottschalk, who was the president of Hebrew Union College from 1972 to 1990, probably 96 or 97. And Dr. Gottschalk, was a Holocaust survivor. He was actually on the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum's original commission with Elie Wiesel and with Bill Clinton when the museum was dedicated. Wow. And Dr. Fred Gottschalk was just a giant of a human being. And he told us a story in rabbinic school the night before we became rabbis that I'll never, ever forget. He talked about in Germany was set afire, and he, with his grandfather, watched the synagogue burn. And the Nazis came in and they took the Torahs out, and they tore up the Torahs, and they threw them outside. And the next morning, as the flames were still simmering, Dr. Gottschalk and his grandfather kind of waded through the water to pick up the pieces of the Torah scroll. And he said that his grandfather turned to him and he said, Alfred, it's your job to put the scroll back together. It's your job to put the Torah back together. And Dr. Gottschalk then went on to become a rabbi and become a professor and then become president of the Hebrew Union College. And the night before becoming a rabbi, he actually said to the students, you now have this mission. You have to put the Torah, you have to stitch this Torah back together. And I'll never, ever forget that moment, of Dr. Gottschalk placing the Torah in our arms and telling us that story. And, it resonated. 15 years before, 10 years before, I met my first Holocaust survivor. It was like 1978, 1979. I had never met anyone. And I remember meeting someone with a tattoo on their arm and just, how, transformed I was by that moment. And I'll never forget it. We were on a ninth grade class trip to New York. And we met, the Marty's parents who were Holocaust survivors. And a man came and he held up a belt that he wore, and, and it was tiny. Even the smallest girl in the class couldn't get it nearly around her waist. And he said, this was the belt that I wore when I was liberated. And then the next person that spoke showed the tattoo on his arm. And I'll never forget this. He said, the number on my arm was 84321. And he said, the moment that tattoo, I knew that I was going to be okay, because 8 plus 4 plus 3 plus I knew I was going to live. And from that moment on, I like that number is seared in my head, 84321. I don't even remember that guy's name, but I remember, that tattoo, the tattoo, seeing the tattoo for the first time. And from that moment on, I said, the Holocaust was going to have some impact in my life. And Israel and Yad Vashem and trips to Israel, kind of solidified that. And then I ended up marrying a girl from Detroit whose parents both came to United States in 1938, one from Berlin and one from Munich, and they had this amazing story, of my father-in-law had a total stranger in Detroit sign an affidavit for them that to sponsor this family, because the family used to be in the suit business and they manufactured clothing. And Schmidt in 1932, a guy named Schmidt, and I love Schmidt because you have a Schmidt in your story too. But Mr. Schmidt left Berlin and went to see my wife's grandfather, who said, Schmidt, you look like a vagabond. Take a couple nice suits with you when you go to America. And he took a couple suits with him when he left for America. And Schmidt never forgot that. And then, in 1937, when things changed for the Stark family, my father-in-law, remembered Schmidt and remembered that story and wrote to him. And Schmidt took it to a guy named Herman Osnos in Detroit and said, this guy helped me when I was in Germany. Can we help him? And Mr. Osnos, kind of vouched for the Stark family and brought, Werner and Walter Stark over as 18 and 20-year-old boys. The original letters are in the Holocaust Museum in Washington, which really means a lot to us.
Oh, that's wonderful.
But, it was the confluence of all these stories. And Julie's mom came, Julie's grandfather fought, in World War I as a very proud German and a decorated lawyer in Germany, and never thought anything could kind of was able to leave Germany in 1937. But because of, through political connections and through help from strangers, and started all over in Detroit. So, these stories meant a lot to us as a family. So as a rabbi, I kind of took Dr. Gottschalk's story and my own family's story and Julie's story and said, the Holocaust was going to be a big part of my teaching and my education. And, I got involved with the United States Holocaust Museum. I got involved with the Illinois Holocaust Museum. And it just, to me, it's a really, really big part of what we do.
Absolutely.
I always quote Elie Wiesel's story in a book called Gates of the Forest, where Elie Wiesel wrote, "Why did God invent people?" And the answer is because God loves stories. So whether it's the story of the seven Weber siblings, whether it's the story of Schmidt in Detroit, whether it's the story of Luba, in Poland, we are commanded to tell these stories, and it's an honor. It's an honor to tell these stories.
Absolutely. So let's talk more about how, because I think that when other people come to our website or even to our YouTube channel afterwards, I love it that you guys have joined us here this morning on Instagram Live. Thank you. I see like Barry Silver is here and Samantha, and there are a couple other names here that I'm guessing are probably congregants of yours. Thank you so much for tuning in, you guys. We also have this YouTube channel where you will be replayed and everyone can come back. And so we have educators that actually come on and listen to these replays when it's convenient for their schedules. And so what is it that you would like to share with educators about Holocaust education? What has worked really successfully for you? Obviously storytelling, but can you give us some specifics that might help other educators in the future?
Storytelling, by far travel is the best, whether it's being able to take groups of students to Israel or to Poland. We do an annual trip every year to Poland, and to stand in, to walk the train tracks in Auschwitz and to see the boxcar and to hear those stories, to kind of to touch history like that. To me, there's nothing better, whether that's an adult or whether that's a kid. I made a promise, after the first time I went to Auschwitz just a couple years ago. I said, I can't believe it's been this long. I've been to other concentration camps, but I hadn't been to Auschwitz. And I made this commitment that every year we would go back. And, as emotional as it is. So, having those real experiences, having those direct connections with the Ginger Lanes of the world, and with the Ralph Raybachs of the world, and with these other unbelievable, storytellers, kind of is by far the most important. And to also just to find the things in the story that resonate with you. There's pieces of everyone's family that are woven into all of these stories. And sometimes we have to dig a little deeper, but when we do, we're able to find them. Your story is a great illustration of that. Alyssa's story is a great illustration of that. Here she was a Holocaust educator, and only to find out that both of her grandfathers kind of had a piece of this story that she's telling. So we all have a piece of this story, and the question is, how do we access it? How do we dig deep? And to all of the educators out there, there's always a path in to be able to find that connection.
Right. And then let's take some of the more controversial aspects of it. What do you, as a rabbi, what do you say to people who deny the Holocaust?
Northwestern had a professor, and kind of I point them to listen to these actual stories. These aren't made up stories. These are real stories, and we have to do everything we can to make these stories come alive. Everyone who views history always has different avenues to view it, but we've got to make sure that we stay on point, and that we continue to tell our story, because so many people want to deny this part of our history, and so many people want to deny kind of that it really happened, that it really becomes an obsession on our part, that we have to keep driving that home. We have to
yes
now, or whether what's happening kind of elsewhere, how we respond and how we reflect.
Sure. And do you have opportunities? I don't know why this is freezing. I'm hearing every other word. You guys, I'm relying on you in the audience. If you can't hear what Rabbi Steve is saying, go ahead and put something in the comments so that I'll ask him to repeat it. But it might just be my connection that I'm missing like a word here and there. And also feel free to ask any questions. Let's talk about these stories and with deniers and so forth. This, at least for me, and I think you and I are the same age, we're the same vintage. For me, this is really the worst that anti-Semitism has been since I've been born. And I don't know if you're experiencing it that way, but that's
and my greatest fear is we're headed into a really, really dark chapter. I think that it could get a whole lot worse before it gets better.
And so what do we do, first of all, to address that? And second of all, to keep people, to keep Jewish people in particular calm, so that they don't, live in fear every single day. How can we channel our efforts and our knowledge and our energy towards something that will be positive and to really help all of us move forward, not in a reactive mode, but in a very progressive and active mode?
Yeah, for sure. One of my favorite museums in Israel is called the Museum of the Jewish People. It used to be called Beit HaTfutzot, the Diaspora Museum. Mm-hmm. And there's a beautiful quote. Israel had an amazing poet by the name of Abba Kovner, who was actually like the poet laureate of Israel. And on the top of the museum, there was a quote that I read 30, 40 years ago that still resonates with me. And it says, this is the story of a people that was scattered over all the world, yet remained a single family. A nation which time and again was doomed to destruction, yet out of the ashes rose new life. Out of the ashes rose new life. And what I love about that is that, kind of, unfortunately, this is a pattern that we've seen over and over and over and over and over again. And we are that new light. We are that new, we have that responsibility to kind of carry on that story. We have that responsibility to share light for others and to hold up the mirror.
Oh, come back. Oh, no. I think Rabbi Steve is going to come back. I wasn't sure if it was my connection or his. So I'm actually just going to change locations just in case it's mine, you guys. But stay here because I think that he'll come. Hey, shh. It's okay. This is our wonderful dog who's alerting us that our connection has dropped. But I think he'll come back. Let me invite him back in. Steve Lowenstein. Okay, hang on, guys. We'll send the request and he'll come back. And let's see if this connection is better for both of us. Okay.
Hi.
Oh, good. Okay, great. This is live. This is Instagram Live. Anything goes. Dogs bark, connections get lost, doorbells ring. That's what happens.
Dogs bark.
Yes. Now the dog is behaving, so.
Okay. No problem.
But you were saying something so beautiful, and I'd like you to go back and please repeat that quote in case the connection cut out then, because it was just gorgeous.
So the quote was by Abba Kovner, Israel's poet laureate. And he wrote, "This is a story of a people that was scattered over all the world, yet remained a single family, a nation which time and again was doomed to destruction, yet out of the ashes rose new life." And we're that new life, Alyssa's that new life. You're that new life. Your movie's that new life, and we are, we've been through this so many times, and we'll continue to go through it, and we'll continue to not only survive but thrive because of people like you and because of movies like you're creating. And that's our responsibility, is to know that we're part of this, unbelievable history. We're connected to people horizontally. You are connected to so many people horizontally. You're connected in California and here, and we're connected to so many people horizontally, but we're also connected vertically to the people that came before us, and God willing, the people that are going to come after us.
Right.
you know, and that, you know, kind of all of Judaism is, to me, is to understand that we're part of this unbelievable history of Judaism, and that we will keep telling it and retelling it over and over and over again.
That's right.
And it's always going to be different. It's always going to be evolving. It's always going to be changing.
Very, very true. And I applaud you for the work that you're doing. I'm sure that your students are just soaking everything in and taking advantage of all that it is that you have to offer. What an opportunity to go with you to Auschwitz.
Well, I look forward to, we had to cancel the last trip, but hopefully we'll do it. Hopefully this coming spring we'll be back.
Right, you'll get back on track. Well, I know that your time is limited, and I want to just give you a chance to say any few last things that you want to share with us about the things that you're working on, that you're proud of your congregation for doing. You know, just give us a little more nachas so that we can have bragging rights about your synagogue and all the work that you're doing.
To me, one of the coolest programs around is it's called the Chain of Memory program at the Holocaust Museum, and it's called the Circle of Memory at the Illinois Holocaust Museum. But it's when you're able to twin your bar bat mitzvah with someone who died during the Holocaust. And to me, every single time a student stands up on the bima, and you know, we place an empty chair on the bima, and we remember the name of the student that they're recalling, it just kind of fills me with this unbelievable emotion that, you know, so many people, you know, lost their lives, and it's our responsibility to continue to tell those stories, to stand on their shoulders. You know, I always wrestle with the fact that, you know, we will never get back to what the world Jewish population was in 1939. You know, no matter how hard we work, no matter what happens in our world, you know, in my lifetime, in your time, we'll never get back to the number of Jews there was in the world in 1939. And that just leaves me with such an empty feeling that, you know, think about all the lives that are lost, all the people, all the stories that we weren't able to retell. And now we have to, we have to find ways to tell those stories, and we will. And, you know, Am Shalom and the students at the congregation do, and the adults do, whether it's through study or whether it's through reading or whether through books or movies like yours. We can't wait to show your movie here when we can. You know, those are all different ways to make sure that we keep that we stay on message and we keep those. I mean,
that sounds like an extraordinary program. What a moving thing to do. What a beautiful, beautiful thing to do. That leads me to, I mean, and you let me know when you have to go, because I'll just keep asking questions. But that leads me to the idea of, you know, busting out of the echo chamber and working with other congregations of different faiths and different houses of worship and so forth. And do you have opportunities at Am Shalom to partner either with with churches or mosques and so forth?
We do a lot. We do a lot of that. We had historically we had a relationship with the mosque in Northbrook, but the imam left, and, you know, kind of we haven't been able to reconnect with them. We have, you know, kind of, here we are in Chicago, you know, in a very affluent suburb of Glencoe. But, you know, there's so much, you know, pain, and there's so much devastation 20 miles, you know, in either direction from where we are. Am Shalom has this unbelievable relationship with an organization in Chicago called the Lighthouse, which is in the Lawndale area, which was a formerly Jewish, you know, area. And we have this historic relationship with these amazing students called the Soul Children of Chicago, where we have a scholarship fund. We give the seniors of the Soul Children. They're the oldest gospel youth choir in the country. And they've been in Chicago for 36 years. And, you know, Walt Whitman, their director, is a dear friend of mine. And, you know, we have this amazing journey, you know, with Walt that we share. So they sing with us every Martin Luther King weekend, and we go down and we do things with them. Actually, one of the most amazing experiences I had is I actually brought Walt the first time we went to the African American History Museum. We did just a quick tour. We did a day in and day out of Washington. And we went to the Holocaust Museum for a couple hours, and then we went to the brand new African American History Museum. And Walt was on that trip, and Walt Whitman was on that trip with us. And he was blown away by being at the Holocaust Museum, but we were blown away by seeing the African American Museum through him, and kind of the confluence of those experiences. So we really pride ourselves on those relationships and being able to help one another through these challenging times, and to be able to do it together, because none of us, we can't do it alone. We need each other.
We absolutely need each other, and we need also to, I have started to begin my programs, and I forgot to do it today, to just really acknowledge the native lands from where I'm speaking, of the indigenous people. And we are all one, right? We know this. We are all one, and for all of us to just get along with each other and have more than civil discourse, but loving and engaging and meaningful conversations.
Yep, we are linked in a web that is that is never ending, and sometimes we lose sight of that. We think that those threads are broken, but in reality they're not, and we have to work hard on those relationships. And
yes.
You're doing that with your film, and we're trying to do that in the congregation, whether that's local churches right in Glencoe, or kind of down in the city, or in Evanston or in Waukegan, or whatever direction you go, there's repair work to be done. And
that's right.
and that is kind of your dad was a great example of that for me when I was a young rabbi, of what tikkun olam, what repair of the world really means. And we have to remember that it's our job, it's our responsibility. And we don't have to do it all, but we can't walk away from it. We can't do nothing.
That's right.
And kind of every little bit that anyone does to lift someone else up, is huge. And we'll keep doing it.
Definitely. And you're also doing this, I'll just do this one little last shout out for what you're doing online with your 2 minutes of Torah. Is this something that you developed during COVID, or was it pre-COVID?
Pre-COVID.
Okay.
Pre-COVID.
Yeah.
So we try to give every week a 2-minute explanation of the Torah portion. I just recorded mine right before I jumped on to Instagram Live. I did it, but I think that it's just a way. I'll be honest, this is my first time on Instagram Live. But whether it's Clubhouse or Instagram Live or there's different ways to communicate, and we have we as a 3,334-year-old tradition of receiving Torah at Mount Sinai just yesterday. Just the holiday of Shavuot just ended for some yesterday. We received Torah some 3,334 years ago, or we left Egypt 3,334 years ago. We got to keep thinking of new ways to tell the story and new ways to connect. And Instagram Live and is just yet another step along that journey. Right. So thanks for introducing Instagram Live to me.
Absolutely. Well, thank you.
What is it? IGTV?
IGTV. It's called IGTV, Instagram TV. And it's not a podcast because you see our faces. And we will repost this on the Beth Lane Film YouTube channel. So you'll be there for forever. For as long as YouTube is there, you'll be there. Love
it. Yeah. Beth, I just want to wish you the best of luck tomorrow.
Thank you.
I think it's going to be a huge moment for you. I think that marking the 75th anniversary of the siblings all stepping foot on this soil, kind of who would have thought 75 years later, on a big screen, you're going to be telling that story. And that's really, really special.
Well,
So
thank you.
we're honored to be a part of it.
Thank you so much. We are honored to have you engaged, and as investors in the film, we are so grateful. We can't do it alone. We just can't do it alone. And if I can just take like 30 seconds here right at the end to circle back to the very beginning of our conversation, and you were talking about Pittsburgh. And today, my dear, wonderful cousin, I'm not going to name names just because it's, you know, it's private for her, but she's in surgery. She's having very, very serious surgery today. And it was her first cousin with whom she was very, very close, named Joyce Feinlib, who was murdered at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh. And you mentioned that you were born in Pittsburgh, you were bar mitzvahed in Pittsburgh at the Tree of Life Synagogue. And so this is just a big shout out to Pittsburgh, to the Tree of Life Synagogue, and for all of us to continue to be vigilant and to share the stories over and over and over again.
And beautifully said. My parents were married there. My bar mitzvah was in Cleveland. But,
okay. They were married.
But you know what? But just look at that name, the Tree of Life. You know, like it's rooted in the ground. It's reaching up to the top, and its branches are spreading. You know, kind of. You know, to me, if there's no better metaphor for what you're doing, what we're doing. You know, every step along the way.
Well, we're doing it together. Thank you so much for everything, and I look forward to the next time.
Okay. All the best, okay?
All right. Be well.
Thanks.
Everybody.
It was an honor to be with you. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks
Bye.
so much. Bye, Rabbi. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Next Wednesday on Banter, we have Max Silverman, who is a teenager. I'm so excited to bring him on. He's the president of Teens Be Heard. So we'll be learning a lot about that. And then we have all kinds of guests lined up for June. But yeah, do think of us tomorrow at the 75th anniversary of the Weber Sibling Survival of America. Please hit like, subscribe to our newsletter, subscribe to our website, all those things. It's a pleasure to meet everybody. And until then, bye.